Good evening, everyone. Tonight we're doing Chapter 10 in Human Resource Management, Employee Separation and Retention. Separation is never a good thing. It's never a enjoyable thing. I've done it several times with employees, for employees, and it's absolutely devastating at times and painful. It's not something I relish. So tonight we'll distinguish between involuntary and voluntary turnover and discuss how each of these forms of turnover can be leveraged for competitive advantage, list the major elements that contribute to perceptions of justice and how to apply these in organizational contexts involving discipline and dismissal, specify the relationship between job satisfaction and various forms of job withdrawal, and identify the major sources of job satisfaction in work contexts. Design a survey feedback intervention program and use this to promote retention of key organizational personnel. Employment at will doctrine. Either the employer or the employee could sever the employment relationship at any time. New York State definitely has that, unless you're dealing with a bargaining unit such as a labor union. Wrongful discharge suit can be filed as civil rights infringement if the person discharged is a member of a protected group, such as somebody who's a minority or a woman, etc. Paper trail has to be made, so if you want to fire someone, definitely from a minority group, or any group, but especially the minority group where there's a possibility of a lawsuit, you should cover yourself and have a paper trail. There are people that do bad work. Some of them try to hide their bad work and use their minority status as the ability to, do what they want. And of course, the law understands that. There are people in every sector of society that take cover, and use certain things to their advantage. But at the same time, the law has to have equal protection for everyone. So we have to differentiate between those that are legitimate and those that are illegitimate. So what a paper trail does is basically gives you the ability to document what this employee did. They came late, they were insubordinate, they failed to finish assignments, etc., etc. Initiating punitive actions short of termination in an effort to get the employee to quit on his own or her own, basically make their life difficult so that they don't want to stay there. And paying off the employee in excess severance pay in return for waiving the right to sue for wrongful dismissal. I know this happened to somebody close to me. They were given $20,000 to leave, and they felt that a lawsuit would cost more, so they left as a result. Principle of justice, outcome fairness, and non-compete clauses that basically, if let's say you're a salesman and you are going into the same line of work, you are being told that you can't go into that same line of work for another year or two, so as not to be a competition and steal away. Customers' procedural justice, lack of bias, and informational accuracy are the most critical determinants to see whether or not procedural justice was had. And of course, interactional justice refers to the interpersonal nature of how the outcomes were implemented. Go to slide 5 in chapter 10. 6 determinants of procedural justice. Consistency. The procedures are applied consistently across time and other persons. Bias suppression. Basically, the procedures are applied by a person who has no vested interest in the outcome and no prior prejudices regarding the individual. Information accuracy, the procedure is based on information that is perceived to be true. Correctability, the procedure has built-in safeguards that allow one to appeal mistakes or bad decisions. Representativeness is the procedure is informed by the concerns of all groups or stakeholders, such as coworkers, customers, and owners affected by the decision, including the individual being dismissed. And ethicality, the procedure is consistent with prevailing moral standards as they pertain to issues like invasion of privacy or deception. Table 10.2, 4 determinants of interactional justice. Explanation emphasizes aspects of procedural fairness that justify the decision, explain basically why you did it. Social sensitivity, treat the person with dignity and respect. Consideration, listen to the person's concerns, and of course empathy, which is so important. Identify with the person's feelings. Progressive discipline, basically you don't fire somebody outright. You go through a disciplinary process where you counsel someone, you verbally warn them, you write them up, and then of course you suspend them, and then you terminate them. Termination should come about at the end of a systematic disciplinary program. Documentation, punitive measures, and of course alternate dispute resolution such as arbitration and the like. Basically, you go outside of a court and you have somebody basically mediate. Sometimes it's binding, sometimes it's non-binding. Okay, we're not going to go into the particulars of that as it's outside of the scope of this particular chapter. Table 10.3, an example of progressive discipline program. You can see you have offense frequency, the first time, second time, third time, etc. Of course, the responses, let's use the first offense, unofficial verbal warning, and basically documentation, witnesses present. Second offense, official written warning, document filed, and we go down, basically you have second official warning documented and temporary suspension and last chance notification. Of course, at the end of the fifth offense, you have termination. This is a typical, I've used this in 1199 when I worked in the Maimonides Medical Center to bring up charges against employees that were very, very negligent in their duties. Table 10.4, stages in alternative dispute resolution. First one is open door policy. Two people in conflict, for example, supervisor and subordinate, attempt to arrive at a settlement together. If none can be reached, they proceed to peer review. A panel composed of representatives for the organization that are the same level of those people in dispute. They hear the case and attempt to help the parties reach some sort of settlement and agreement. If none can be made, they proceed to mediation. And here we're going to differentiate at this point, before we really go into the difference between mediation and arbitration, which are forms of alternate dispute resolution. A neutral third party from outside the organization hears the case and via a non-binding process, again, mediation is non-binding, tries to help the disputants arrive at a settlement. If none can be had, then the parties proceed to an arbitration, which is binding. A professional arbitrator from outside the organization hears the case and resolves it unilaterally, and all the parties have to agree to that, and of course it's as binding as a court decision. Many times it's done through experienced employment attorneys or retired judges who do this. Managing involuntary turnover, meaning people who don't want to leave on their own. We have employee assistance programs. Basically, it's a referral service that supervisors or employees can use to seek professional treatment of various problems, usually identified in official documents published by the employer, such as an employee handbook. It gives you an explanation of how it's done. Supervisors and union reps, where relevant, are trained to use the referral service for employees whom they suspect of having health-related issues, and employees are also trained to use the system to make self-referrals when necessary. Continuing with managing involuntary turnover, employee assistance and wellness program. Employee wellness program focus on trying to prevent health-related problems. Some companies take a punitive approach. How important is an employee's health to the performance of the job? Perfect example would be somebody's a fireman or a policeman, where it should be mandatory that they have a certain level of physical fitness to do their job, and if they don't, then there's some punitive actions. They get put on desk duty, they lose a certain amount of pay. I mean, again, I'm not an expert in how the fire department or the police department works on it, but definitely there should be some sort of process. Outplacement counseling helps dismissed employees manage the transition from one job to another. It includes career counseling, job search support, resume critiques, job interviewing training, and provision of networking opportunities. Reduces the likelihood of litigation by former employees because it builds goodwill. An employee doesn't feel abandoned, and they are less likely to bring a punitive lawsuit. Voluntary turnover, support former employees transitioning to alternative employment, preventing employees who are highly valued by the organization from leaving, drivers of retention, basically pay and job security benefits, work environment opportunities for development, which you want to make sure happen so you don't have voluntary turnover. In other words, you don't have people leaving on their own because they feel that they're underpaid, not getting proper health benefits, work environment's not good, or they're stuck in their rut and they don't have good job mobility. The next one is an overall model of the job dissatisfaction, job withdrawal process, basically figure 10.1. On the left hand, you have causes of job dissatisfaction, such as personal disposition, tasks and roles. You're not happy with the job. Supervisors and coworkers are not happy with them paying benefits. That leads to job dissatisfaction. Of course, you withdraw from the job. You're not interested anymore. And as such, you have behavioral change, physical job withdrawal, and of course, psychological job withdrawal. You're basically burnt out and you behave as if you're not interested anymore. The process of job withdrawal, behavioral change can lead to supervisor-subordinate confrontation. You have whistleblowing, which is a possibility. Of course, physical job withdrawal, and then psychological job withdrawal, which manifests in low-level job involvement and low-level organizational commitment. Employees can initiate changes through whistleblowing, making grievances. Whistleblowers are often dissatisfied individuals, so that's another outcome of a job from job withdrawal and somebody's dissatisfied. and they feel that they have to go outside because they cannot bring about internal change. They don't feel empowered. And this is done out of a sense of commitment to the right thing, or through frustration, taking their concerns to external constituencies so that they'll be heard. Job involvement, again, defined as the degree to which people identify themselves with their job. Organizational commitment is the degree to which an employee identifies with the organization and is willing to put forth effort on its behalf. If a person is withdrawing, they're disinterested. Of course, there'll be much less of that. Someone's going to put their best foot forward. They're not going to go out of their way to help the organization. Let's move on. Job satisfaction and job withdrawal. Job satisfaction functions of values. Different employees have different views of which are important. Perception influenced by a frame of reference. Sources of job dissatisfaction, unsafe working conditions, and this is why we have the OSHA Act, the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970, to prevent unsafe work conditions. Nature of the work in a job, managing safety-related perceptions critical, and protecting workers and ensuring that their safety is particularly challenging when trying to manage overseas operations. This is especially true during COVID. I work in a healthcare institution, and we go out of our way to make sure that employees feel safe. We install sneeze guards, Purell stations all over the place, social distancing. We give out PPE to everyone just to make sure everybody feels safe. Adding in extra phones so that people don't have to use the same phone. We go above and beyond the call of duty to make people feel comfortable and happy. Slide 18, managing voluntary turnover, sources of job dissatisfaction, personal dispositions, negative affectivity, people giving off negative vibes, tasks and roles, strong positive relationship between task complexity and job satisfaction, and that basically is job rotation. You don't make sure that employees are not stuck doing the same job over and over again, that they have the ability to move around. All right, let us move on to the next slide. Pro-social motivation, supervisors and coworkers, and pay and benefits. Negative activity is a term used to describe a dispositional dimension that reflects pervasive individual differences in satisfaction in any and all aspects of life. The term pro-social motivation is often used explicitly to capture the degree to which people are motivated to help other people. And that's important. You want to work in a place where you feel if you need help, somebody else is out there to help you. The worst feeling is, and take it from my own personal experience, is when you are stuck in a situation where people don't want to help you. Measuring and monitoring job satisfaction, a couple of terms we'll define. Of course, you have your self-reports, job descriptive index, pay satisfaction questionnaire, and pulse surveys. Just to talk about pulse surveys for a minute, and we'll get to the other two. Pulse surveys are very short questionnaires that go out every day or once a week that focus on a small set of specific questions, perhaps even just one question which the company wants to keep track of all the time, basically taking the pulse of the organization and making sure that people are happy. Okay, so just to describe what is a job descriptive index, JDI, it's a 72-term instrument designed to measure 5 dimensions of job satisfaction: satisfaction with supervisors, coworkers, pay, promotional opportunities, and of course the work itself. PSQ, pay satisfaction questionnaire, was developed to assess the 5 dimensions of satisfaction with pay: level, benefits, raises, structure, benefits, raises, structure / administration, provided better representation of variance in the items studied, and gave you an idea, a very, very fine-tuned idea of what people like or dislike about their jobs. And of course, we mentioned the pulse survey before. Let us continue and finish up. Slide 21, our final slide, managing voluntary turnover, survey feedback interventions, employee survey research, employee satisfaction surveys, making sure that you are able to trend dissatisfaction and basically nip it in the bud before people start leaving in droves. Allow company to monitor a trend over time, providing means of empirically assessing the impact of changes in policy or personnel. Allow company to compare itself with others in the same industry in these dimensions to see if you're falling short, if you're doing better, or you're average. Allow company to check for differences between units, benchmark best practices that might be generalized across units. Learning from other organizations, tool for uncovering systematic concerns that are driving retention problems. Thank you and have a great day.